In CIST 1510, this week we will discuss Chapter 5. This is Responsive Design, Part 1, Designing for Mobile Devices. In this chapter, we're going to look at the principle of responsive designs. We'll look at the pros and cons of a mobile website. We'll describe a mobile-first strategy. We will insert a meta viewpoint element and define a viewpoint. You'll use a mobile simulator, create a sticky element, integrate custom fonts, use a pseudo class, or create a mobile-friendly navigation system, adding a telephone link, and how to make rounded corners. Okay, as I've mentioned in the past, one of the challenges for web design is that we do not know the type of device that will be used by our users to view our website. So to solve this problem, we have responsive design. Responsive design is a website development strategy. What this does, it strives to provide an optimal user experience of a website regardless of the device. So we're going to design our website so that regardless of the device that it is being used on, being viewed by, the website is going to be designed for that device. So it's going to correspond, the content, web page are going to respond to the screen size of the device. And what we want to do is we want to minimize unnecessary zooming, scrolling. We want to make the reading and interacting with the site as convenient as possible. So we'll look at our roadmap. We'll look at our roadmap to redesigning a website for mobile devices. First, we're going to add a meta viewpoint element to each HTML document. Create a sticky header. Adding custom fonts. The styles page for a mobile viewpoint. Styles for the map for a mobile viewpoint. So when we're looking at this example, here's this fitness club. The different pages. And it'll be designed for appearances on a cell phone, for example, in this one, or a mobile device. It'll have a different design for a website that is going to be used on a computer or a tablet. So we'll have different designs for these. So when we're designing responsive designs, we want to make sure that our content is easy to read and navigate on devices. Like I said, the desktop, the tablet, and phones. So we want this to where we can redefine the HTML and CSS standards, browsers. We can keep this where it evolves and improves the philosophy around responsive design. So an example here of responsive design on these three different images. I'm going to expand these. So we'll see on here that we have the desktop, the way the site will be designed, a tablet, and then finally a mobile device. Mobile devices, we'll make sure that we kind of stop unnecessarily left and right scrolling. So we're going to look at redesigning this site to fit on these two tablets, tablet and phone, so it is responsive to mobile devices. Now, a fluid layout, this applies a proportional size measurement to the web page of wireframe content. Viewpoints, that's the viewing area of a web page. Okay, so it's going to refer to the area of the web page the user sees at any one time. This is something that's going to be regardless of the device, browser, screen size, resolution, window size, and orientation. That's going to be the viewpoint. When we talk about responsive or flexible images, these are images that are going to shrink or grow based on the size of the viewport. So you will not use a height and width element attributes or values in the HTML document. You will use this in the CSS rules that will be used to redesign or resize the images relative to the wireframe and the viewport. Now, media queries, this allows web page developers to detect the approximate pixel size of the current viewport. With media queries, this is what we're going to use to apply the CSS rules to that viewport size. With this, we'll have a media query. It's going to set up for mobile devices. One that will set up for tablets. One will set up for PCs. Okay, mobile website. This will be something that will be completely separate, parallel website, optimized for mobile users to address problems with viewports. They're going to be identified with an M dot or MO prefix in the URL. They're used to optimize the viewing experience for a wide range of devices using one website. Now, the downside for this is it multiplies the work required to maintain, because really what you have now is two separate websites for the same organization. So you're doubling your workload by using the websites with a .m or M dot. Now, the mobile device strategy, the mobile first strategy, is employees' responsive design principles. With this, it takes the responsive design principles, so the web developer designs a flexible wireframe and the essential content for the smallest viewport first. And from there, they add the content as the viewport grows. Like I said, media queries are going to be used to add styles for the progressively larger viewports as they progress from a tablet to laptop to desktop. And this is a more productive way to build a website from scratch. Now, to implement a website development approach, that is going to depend on the factors of the current environment. What is your target audience? What resources do you have available? And what time do you have available to tackle the project? So based on those factors, we'll determine how you implement the web development. So we see at the top screen here, we have a mobile first approach. We're in this approach. They start off designing for the phone, then a tablet, laptop, desktop, where the traditional approach is going the other direction. Now, web pages with fluid layouts, they're going to adjust the web page design and content based on the size of the viewport. Responsive designs are going to be based on fluid layouts. Fixed layouts, on the other hand, do not change the width based on the size of the viewport. So that would use fixed measurements such as pixels. It's going to define the width of areas of the wireframe, which that fixes the width of the content regardless of the size of the viewport. We create a fluid layout. It's going to require a fluid grid, media queries, and responsive images. So if you're going to create a fluid grid, you're going to design a web page that uses grids or columns. The mobile viewpoint should use a single column design, which is going to be ideal for the smaller viewport. Now, as the size of the viewport increases, the number of columns can also increase. When you're following a mobile-first strategy, once again, it's best to use a single column layout for mobile displays, because you want to stop. You want to prevent your users from having to scroll horizontally. You don't want them to have to scroll left or right to view your content. So you want everything displayed on a single screen. You want minimal scrolling. You want to make sure that you analyze each page when mobile devices. So we'll look at a diagram here. When we look at a desktop wireframe, so we've got our header, navigation, ads, call to action, main content, sidebar, footer, the typical layout wireframe for a website. When we look at a mobile wireframe, we'll start off with a header, followed by the navigation, or the nav, the sidebar content, main content. And so we're going to put it more in a linear format. Now, when you're designing for a mobile viewport, some key practices include making use of 100% of the screen space. You want to design the navigation to be easy and intuitive. Keep your load times to a minimal. One of the important things to do is just to display the essential page content and maybe hide non-essential page content. You want to design a simple layout and make your content easy to access and easy to read. Now, if you're creating a website with a responsive design, you have a meta viewport element. Okay, this must be included within every HTML file. What this does, it provides the browser with the information about the page dimensions and how to adjust the scaling on the web page. You can use a mobile simulator. It's going to display how a web page looks on mobile devices. A lot of these appear online. You do have these also in Google. Or your Chrome browser, for example. You come into more tools and developer tools. You will see the device toolbar. Okay, so I can change my device here to see how my web page is going to look on these devices. So if I want to see it on an iPhone 10, granted this does not appear very well as far as Cengage itself. If I were to go to, say, GNTC's website, I want to see how this would look on a mobile device. All right, so see, this site's designed a little bit better, so a lot better than what would be on MindTap as far as looking at this on a mobile device. And I can choose to see how it will look on different devices. I want to see it on an iPad and so forth. So this is going to be your easiest way to look and determine how your site will look on mobile devices. All right, so the first thing you do is when you're going to do a mobile first strategy is analyze each page, determine the most essential content and whether to hide some of the content on a mobile device. Now, your branding, your company name, logo, you may decide that you want that to remain at the top of the web page as users scroll down. So if you do this, you would create a sticky header. Now, this is going to be known as a sticky element. Navigation for websites is going to look different in each viewport. So mobile viewport designers may use a hamburger button or icon display or toggle navigation system. Also consider your font. So you got many custom fonts that can be used for your website. So you can download them into your web server or link them to an HTML file. So we see the hamburger button, the 3 lines. That's going to be a lot of your navigation in a website for mobile devices. All right, a pseudo class can be used with a selector, and this specifies the state of an element. All right, so you can specify a style to apply when a mouse hovers over an element. You can have essential information added to the home page without removing the content from the web page visitor with desktop devices. You can use the div element to accomplish this task. By default, element borders are going to use a 90-degree angle at each corner. You can round this off, so you can adjust the angles. You specify a border all around an element. This will be done in the CSS property. And you'll see you use a border-radius to change the border. Let's see some examples here of the first page for mobile. The About Us page for mobile first design has now you'll see here in this one, when we analyze our pages, we look and see what needs to be fixed. Look at this device, the telephone number. This is not a link. Okay, so we need to make sure that's a link, especially when we're using for designing for cell phones, mobile devices, the viewports for that size. So the user can just click on this and dial the number. Also, you'll need to see the map does not fit inside the viewport, so that would need to be adjusted as well. Now, one of the keys to designing for mobile devices is to test. You want to test as many smartphone devices as possible. We did look at the Google Chrome device mode. Okay, so we'll show you devices you can test them there. Obviously, testing on the actual device is going to be the more optimal thing. Not every device you're going to have access to, so you will have to use simulators such as the Google Chrome. All right, so now we're going to look as we reach the end of chapter 5. We're now going to look at this week's discussion, the analyze, correct, improved, corrected in CSS file. So this week's discussion is to work through this, and we're going to do that together in this video. We're going to work through the lab itself, and at the end of the lab, you're to look at the question and answer the question. So the question says you work with several units of measurement, such as pixels, percentages, and ems. Research the VU unit of measurement and provide a summary of it. Your discussion this week is to work through this lab, then answer the questions. You're also to choose one of the other units of measurements that are available and compare them, the one you chose, to the choice of your classmates in your replies. So research VM, choose one of the other elements, write about it, and then in your replies, compare your choice of elements to your classmates. All right, so let's start off with our first task. We're to open the index.html file and review the page. We're to update the comment with our name, today's date, and the file name. Okay. Now to save time, I am going to be copying the code into my page. Today is September 20th, 2021. All right, so I've got this section finished here. Now, you notice when I check it, I will finish there, but I'm going to make sure that I look over all of this, even though I didn't look through this. So review the index HTML in the embedded browser and resize the pane in its current view to view its current mobile layout. All right, so let's take a look at this device. So this is our web page as it currently is. So the next step is to add a meta viewport element to the index HTML file. Now I'll make sure that I include the content attributes with the appropriate values. Now the meta viewport is going to go in my heading section. So I'm opening up my file. You'll see here I have the keyword meta, the tag meta, and I'm going to set the name to viewport. I'm going to set the content to the width device equals device dash width. And I'm going to set the initial scale to 1.0. So here I've created a meta tag, or used the meta element. I've named it viewport, and I've set the content. The width is going to be set to the device width. So now I'm saying scale this to whatever device is being used. All right, so the next thing, I'm going to the styles.css file, and I'm going to add a comment below the image style. So first I'm going to come over and look over. Okay, I see my image. So I'm going to add a comment below the image style rule to indicate where the style rules for the mobile viewport begin. So we see in my CSS that I do have a comment here. So once again, I'm just adding this in. So this is something that, once again, it's not rendered by the browser. You'll see when I check it, this should not clear off everything. As you can tell, it's taken a while. But I've added the styles. Actually, it's not even performing that check. But so underneath this, underneath the styles rules for the navigation area, add the following styles. So I'll come down to the style rules for the navigation area. I'm going to add the styles in. So I'm going to add a decoration to the nav on order list style to remove the bullet marker. So it's going to be in this here. So go grab that. So put the list style type to none. So in this, I'm removing the marker. And I'm adding a declaration to the nav list item style rule to display it as an inline block. So I'm going to come down to this section here. You can see that I'm adding a display of inline block. I'll run this check. And you see that only one or two passed. The reason why only one or two passed is because I did put this in the wrong area. So make sure that you have your code in the correct place in your CSS. Okay, so where I applied the display inline block, that was only going to be applied now if I had the nav, list item, and the anchor. Okay, so I wanted it with just the nav and list item. You see now that I've moved this to the correct place. I now have you have this passed. All right, so next step is just note that the font family values for the header 1 or the header H1 style rule and the main style rule. Both of these decorations use custom Google fonts. However, the index.html file is not linked to those files. So we're going to open the fonts google.com in your browser, search for and select those fonts, and then add the link element provided by Google Fonts within the head element of the index.html file. So let's start by looking at the header H1. So let's scroll through here and see this. So we got the font family Playfair Display. All right, and then we're going to look at the main style rule. That uses the PT Sans. All right, so we're going to start off by looking at fonts.google. So we'll go to fonts.google.com. Okay, I can't access this from the college, but what they've given me here is the link into this already. So in my index.html, the head section, I'm going to add another link. So in here, I've got the link element. I'm putting the URL, the link to this, to the fonts.google's and then a relative style sheet. This link I will post right now in Blackboard under your Chapter 5 folder. We'll say it's linked to use in discussion coding. All right, click submit. So what you'll do is you'll just come in to Blackboard, copy this, and paste it into your HTML document. All right, so that finishes up the analyze section. And now we're going to move over into the improve. So it's in here. We'll first take a look at our site now, see how this has changed. All right, so we see we've got some navigation is better. Let's see how this is going to look on a mobile device. All right, so we see how it's going to look on a mobile device, on an iPad. Let's look at a iPhone 10. And so we can see that we can scroll. We see that it's better laid out on the iPad or the iPhone 10 than it was previously. So our next task is the index HTML file. We're going to add a class attribute with the value of tablet-desktop to the examples div. All right, and in the style CSS file, below the mobile viewport comment, we're going to add a new comment that indicates that the following style rule hides the tablet desktop class. And below the comment, we're going to add a new style rule that hides the tablet class. So we'll start off with first. We're going to go to the index HTML. And we're going to add a class attribute with the value of tablet desktop to the examples div. So let's first look for our div. So we see our div ID set at examples. And here you see we're going to add the class of tablet desktop. Now, the next thing is in the styles CSS file. So we're going to look for the mobile viewport comment. So we see here we have our comment here. And in the styles, we're going to set the class attribute. We'll go ahead and add the comment too. So we're going to set the display of none. So this is when the browser reads the mobile viewport. They will not be displaying this. Paste this in, do a check. All right, so let's take a look at our page here. I'm going to open up a new browser, so we'll keep one on this area, and then we'll keep an eye on the device as well. So the example div ID is around where we're using the style rules for Chrome. Let's refresh this. So we have the style rules for Chrome. It's not loaded in my browser. It is located in the pop-up browser here. So the next part in the index HTML file, we're going to add a class attribute with a value of btn to the paragraph elements 2, 3, and 4 within the main element. So we'll see what we're adding in the paragraph elements. One second. All right. So we're going to add the BTN with these settings here. So we set the background color, we're adding padding, we're adding the margins, the width, text aligning. So we're going to add this to our CSS. Get the location under the main P. So we're going to check and see what happened here. So we've got to add this to the paragraph elements 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so let's go back and look at our main. So this is what our page will look like once we're finished. I'm going to pop this up so we can compare to where we're at to where we will get to. So where are we at here? Looking for, okay. So we're looking for these 2, 3, and 4. So these elements here are what we're going to add the BTN files to, or excuse me, class to. So I'm just going to replace these. I'm going to run my check. All right, so we're going to look at the changes here. So we see now we have closer to what we're getting towards the final result. All right, so the next step is below the BTN style rule. So we'll go back to styles. We're going to add a new style rule for the anchor element within the BTN class. It's going to specify the color value, removes underlines, and sets font size to 1.25 EMs. And it's going to display as a block. So directly under this, so I'm putting once again the class BTN in the anchor element. I'm setting the color. The text declaration is none, so I'm removing the underlines. Setting the font size, and I'm displaying this as a block. All right, so we passed this. We're going to look and see how we are updated. So now we have the WAP text. So we're looking closer to our final. So let's look at our mobile device and see how it changes there. So we see that we do have the changes have taken place here as well. Our last step is in the index HTML file, add a class attribute with a value of corner to the image element. So this is where we're going to start rounding the element around in the image. So once again, we'll go back and look for this image, which is going to be right here. All right, so my image is going to be the dev tools. Let's see what the image looks like. So this image here, that's in our website. Okay, so see how we got square corners? We're now going to round those. Okay, so, but I've still got to create a styles file, or in the styles, I've got to add a rule. So I'm going to go below the BTNA. And in here, I'm going to create a style rule for the corner class. And it's going to specify that the border pixels are going to be, or the border radius is going to be 12 pixels. So I'm rounding this by 12 pixels. Do the check. All right, so that's passed. I can look at my web page, see when I refresh this, I now have rounded corners. Kind of hard to see on the mobile device. But now we've finished the end of our discussion. So once again, you're now to answer the discussion question that is posted on Blackboard. You can follow along with this tutorial to get your code. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message.